Okay, we are live. We're recording.
Okay, great. So MBT Book Club, this week we are looking at chapter 46 of the trilogy, or chapter 13 in book 2 of MBT. We'll set the intention, which is to come together and hold compassionate, loving space for one another, where we can show up and share our ideas, our interpretations of this material and how we're applying it personally. Really do our best to just lift each other up, to seek to understand one another. No criticism or judgment, just acceptance and love. So why don't we go around and just do a quick check-in. How did everybody enjoy the material, chapter 46?
It was good. We did 2, right, Vanessa? 46 and 47?
Yes.
Right, we did. Yes, we did do 2. Oh, I totally missed that one.
I liked 46. I read it actually shortly after our last meeting. And we had a conversation about how we were going to try and like bullet points, right? I think Maureen's like, I want a summary at the end of every chapter, right? Yeah. So I did a couple of main points, which I actually really, for that one, I found helpful. So I could remember what I read. And then 47 I really liked too, but I actually was short by about 3 pages. I didn't get quite to the end, so there are no bullet points for that one yet. So we can do it later.
Awesome. I'd love to see the bullet points if you want to put them on Slack afterwards.
Sure.
That'd be great.
No problem.
Great. Daniel, what do you think?
I love 47. Got a deeper meaning of the law of attraction and how it, to me, and how it really works.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool, and I love the the 3, what do they call them? Oh, I forgot what you called it.
I think it's just kind of like the 3 paths towards lowering your entropy.
Yeah, exactly. Knowledge and succession and something else, or
service, surrender, and knowledge and wisdom.
That's right. I thought it was kind of cool, and the way he described it was exactly how I'm processing it as well.
Okay, very cool.
In that particular order, so I thought, wow, kind of cool.
Yeah, that is. There's a video which I'll put on Slack too, where he explains. Actually, he did this at TMI, guys, where he explains. He talks about those 3 different paths that you can take. He calls it on the video the path of the warrior's path, right? And then the path of surrender and the path of service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's only like a 3-minute clip, so I'll post that too if you want further explanation of it, I guess. Yeah, so what did I guess I must have started reading it right after we ended our last our meeting, because I completely forgot about chapter 46 and I was more focused on 47. So I can't even remember what 46 is about, but we'll get into it and I'll look at it. I do have it highlighted. 47, the sigh uncertainty, it was hard for me to get through. Yeah, it was hard for me to stay focused for sure. I got a really good understanding when we were at TMI, when Tom was kind of describing how we access the probable database. When he explained it that way, and he kind of acted as though there was a chart there. He was doing it with his hands. I grasped it, and I was like, oh, I'm good. I understand it now. And then when we're going into it in the chapter, I'm like, oh my God, it was like dragging on. It was too much. I was like, I don't need all this information. It's too much information. I'm good where I am.
Hey, TMI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but it's good though. I highlighted a lot, and like you, Christine, I stopped. I had about 3 pages, and I read them this morning. So I did get through them, and I actually ended up highlighting like almost half of what I read this morning. So definitely go finish those 3 pages because they're really valuable. Yeah. Okay, and then I guess Kenji, what are your thoughts around the sigh uncertainty principle? That's what we were looking at.
I actually, you would need to to explain it to me, because I haven't heard that expression before. I know I was at the workshop, but yes. And also for a lot of other, just Tom writes a lot where he just says, like, you know, he uses just like initials and things like that. And I haven't a clue on what those translate into sometimes. Like, I think one of them is PMR. Is that one of them?
Yeah.
Physical matter reality.
Okay, yeah. So when you come across things like that, I kind of need that translated, because I'm actually relatively new to this. I mean, I've done a few workshops at TMI, but as for Tom, this is all really pretty new to me. So FYI.
Yeah, no, that's great. This is a perfect call for you to be on then, because we will be diving into the psi uncertainty principle, so we'll help all of us get a better understanding of it. All right, so I guess let's start with, I'll just give you the heads up, Kenji. They're using the Trilogy, and I'm using the 3 parts. So we're referencing different books. If you wanted to reference, you can go on Google Books, and there's a free copy online. We do a lot of reading from the book and then looking at it. But did anybody have anything from the first page of chapter 46? I had something from the first paragraph. I just highlighted here. It says, even something that is expansive, open, and mystical as the mind of God usually represents only a little picture view of Om. And Om is absolute, unbounded, and manifold. And that's because it is derived from the diminutive little picture perspective of God, the creator and the animator of our physical universe. Okay, so what I like about that is he's really focusing on having us kind of expand our vision and expand our perspective to see this great, big, huge picture that goes even beyond, you know, that that image of, it says something along the lines of, just remember you are here, and it points to this little dot in the universe. Right? And when you look at that, have you seen that before, Kenji? There's like a picture of the universe.
No.
There's an arrow pointing to a tiny little speck within the universe, and it just says, when you get stressed out about politics, religion, or relationships, just remember you are here, right? So it's like there's so much more, you know. So just remember that, put it in perspective. And if you take that concept and you look at it through this frame of mind, that even the universe is just a tiny, tiny little speck in the totality of consciousness, right? And so that's what he's saying here. Like, he was referring to Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History in Time, where Stephen talks about the mind of God, or Mog, he calls it. And he's saying, well, even Stephen's understanding of that is just a tiny little glimpse. It doesn't even compare to the vastness of AUM, of the absolute, unbounded manifold of LCS. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel like I really understand what the can I tell you what my bullet points are?
Yeah.
Okay, so the main point, and I probably read this like 5 days ago, so I have to, the main points were, we are a tiny portion of an unfathomably large system. Be humble and have fun learning.
Yeah.
So those were my three takeaways. But I do wonder, like, what's the point, right? If it's like we can't, even like just the universe, right? We can't comprehend it. It's too big, you know? And then to say, well, it's even bigger, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I still don't get that either, you know? Like, or I can't. It's even harder to not understand that, you know? So I'm sure that Tom has a reason for explaining that, you know, we're, you know, even what we think is so incredibly large is just a tiny point, you know, amongst a much larger system. But I feel like it's like my brain certainly just isn't big enough to understand, to conceptualize of like just the universe, you know.
I think it's something like you look at a beach, figure that as the
metaphor.
Yeah, metaphor, and use that as aum, right? AUM. Just a little speck, like this little piece of sand we're just part of that, but we're still part of this LCS, this Aum, and we need to exist so that everything falls into order, even though it's high entropy right now. But obviously we for where we are, we try to create this low entropy. We try to create order. We try to build a sandcastle, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And if we let things go without learning anything, a sandcastle eventually becomes just scattered all over the place. So we're here to learn and grow and to try to make that sandcastle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But we all need to be part of this whole system.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good way to. Yeah, absolutely. It's like the other analogy that people use is, just because you're a wave in the ocean doesn't mean you're not separate from the ocean. Temporarily, you may appear to be separate, but you're part of the ocean. You're part of that whole. It all works together. Christine, I think what you're saying is like there's so much, and it's hard to grasp with our logic, right? So like you said, so what's the point? Like, why are we even? Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to understand it? So that's a good question. So why are you?
Well, no, I think what I don't understand is like why I understand like why I'm reading this book and, why we kind of repeatedly come back to this material and discuss things. But what I don't understand is what's the importance of thinking that you're just so tiny, right? Like,
oh, okay.
So it's like, I understand. And it's like I said, it's like almost like I can't fathom the universe. Right. So I certainly can't fathom having that whole thing being much a tiny part of something even incredibly larger. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And for me, my understanding is why this is helpful is because the relevance is that what it does is it takes us away from being the center of everything, the center of the universe, the center of our attention. And instead, it helps us kind of put ourselves aside, take ourselves out of the equation and kind of see the big picture,
Sure.
See what the role is that we're playing in this big picture.
Right. Okay. I understand that.
Yeah. Kenji, what are your thoughts?
Well, in terms of the grandness of the universe, I mean, in the earlier part of my life, I was really into the kind of a lot of this external stimuli and stuff and learning about that kind of stuff. And it still interests me, but my journey's really gone inward now. So, and that same vastness exists looking inward as well. But I kind of stopped trying to figure it all out. I'm just kind of working on little pieces as they come up, so to speak. And it's kind of like when I'm ready for it, it's gonna happen. And, that's what I've found out over the last few years, especially with a lot of experiences I've had. It's like they all build on each other. And as I'm ready to learn those new aspects that I haven't a clue about right now, or unanswered questions, and I have many, they come to me. But I stopped, it's hard to say, but I kind of stopped pursuing them. I'm just, like I say, kind of letting them just happen. It's kind of a whole paradigm shift for me. So I'm still playing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. I posted something the other day on Instagram that says surrender is letting go of trying to understand and accepting not knowing, right? Yeah. And Tom says it all the time, and I know it's cliche by now, but it's living gracefully with uncertainty, right? You don't have to know.
But Vanessa, don't you feel like what we're doing is we're trying to understand something here with what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I am. I mean, I'm trying to understand the book, number one. But number two, how I think I mentioned this previously, how these meetings and being kind of with this material all the time has made a change in my life since since starting to be in the book club. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I do, because I'm the same way in that I know I wouldn't read this if I wasn't part of this group dynamic. There's no way, and I haven't, for 2.5 years. But when I feel like reading this is a different type of spiritual practice for me, because I do get ahas, I get major insights, and I'm like, wow, and it really helps keep everything in perspective. And other times, I'm just reading the same line over and over again. I'm like, oh man.
Yep.
But what it's helping me do is focus my intent. And that's what it all comes down to, is focusing your intent, right? Yeah, so I find it helpful for sure. And I see that we are trying to understand, but we're trying to understand it at the being level. So we want to grasp it intellectually and then have it sink down into the being level. And that's what the whole point of this forum is to bring it to that being level. So we're not just reading it and skimming it through it and understanding it intellectually. Okay, so anything else, I guess, from the first or second page of 46?
I underlined the on page the second page.
Yeah.
1, 2, third paragraph down, last line. It says, perhaps getting the credit is not as important as it first appears. Which I like, because I do think we're so typically like at work, and everybody's so focused on getting the credit, giving credit where credit is due. I just liked what he said there.
Yeah. I liked at the beginning, at the top of the page there, when he says, Big Cheese is the division manager. Kenji, have you heard about the Big Cheese?
I have not heard of the Big Cheese.
It's just kind of a funny, playful name that Tom has given an entity that kind of helps to oversee how things work in our PMR reality, in this physical matter reality. And so he names him the Big Cheese. And so he just says, so Big Cheese is the division manager. And then he goes, progressing on down the chain of command, one eventually gets to a few assistants and their helpers who are concerned with our beloved OS, our system, and its inhabitants. I liked that because I thought, as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, so that's what Tommy is. He's like one of the assistants. He's like one of the helpers, right?
Well, he even says that too, right?
What's that?
He even says that.
I was just going to say what he said to us, Daniel, when we asked him what his role is.
Yeah.
But he humbled it down even more so and said, I'm just an errand boy.
That's right. He did say that.
Yeah. I'm an errand boy. And yeah, or a troubleshooter, he said. When there's a problem, they send me in. I like that. And yeah, to touch upon what you were saying, Christine, getting credit, like where that comes from, that's just ego. Right? Because we have that fear that we're not good enough, and so our ego covers that up to be like, oh, I need to get this credit. So that's really good awareness. So does that ever come up for any of you? I just kind of want to bring it back to the personal level. Like, do you ever feel like you want to get credit for something and then feel bad that you didn't get it? Or what's kind of a fear that you're working on, or where do you notice your ego coming up?
I usually don't, like, I give credit where credit is due. Like when I used to be in management, I wouldn't, if someone had completed a certain task, I'd give them full credit for it. And I know many managers who I worked along with, they would take credit for it, right? And I thought, you asshole, you. But
is that your ego then, now judging?
That's probably my ego, thinking you're not very authentic. Like, come on, like, it's not your work, it's your it's a teamwork, right? When you think about it. Working together to get it done. You're empowering that employee to get it done. So you should get credit for it. Not you. The whole team should get credit for it.
So does that show up for you personally? Do you feel like when you do something, you should get credit for it?
Yeah. If I did it myself, I should get credit for it.
Okay. How about you, Christine?
I don't know if I feel so much focused on, obviously have, ego related stuff, but I think mine tends to not so much about getting credit. I feel like one thing I notice, and you know what, my heating system is loud. If that's bothering you guys, just let me know. If you can hear it, you can't hear it.
Nope.
Is my bigger issue that I notice is being right. And the need to be correct, and really being aware of when I'm having a conversation and I'm like, that's, I want to be right. And then kind of just having that's something that I'm more aware of. And letting that go, and like how when you let it go and you realize that so many things are just like not terribly important, it's a way easier way to live. So much easier, you're like, oh, okay, it's sort of, it gives you a little bit of insight into how Tom references like having pleasant experiences and sort of, having a, life is pleasant. And I'm like, wow, this actually can be pleasant if I stop caring about being right, generally over really stupid things that don't matter at all, Yeah. So that's what it is.
And pretty much everything, it doesn't like, that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all stuff, right?
Yep.
It's really trivial. In light of the big picture, it's really trivial.
Right. Yep.
Kenji, how about yourself? Where does your ego come up?
Oh, just about everywhere. But I wouldn't refer to it as credit for me. One of my nemesis archetypes are being a people pleaser. And so I'm always looking for, acknowledgement. That would be the word I would use. That's kind of where I tie my self-esteem and self-worth in from. And that's one of the really bad things about being a people pleaser for you, is you tend to get your acknowledgement and your self-worth and all of that from other people. And so that's why you can be like really so emotionally fragile on what other people think about you, because that's where all of your worth is tied up in. So that's how I would more characterize it, and that's something I'm been actively working on for the last 2 years in particular. So yes.
Okay, yeah, I also shared that as well. Not so much people pleaser, but what other people think of me. Even though on the surface, like when I say that, I'm like, no, I don't care what other people think of me. But I know that's a fear that I have, because otherwise I wouldn't be afraid to get in front of 100 people and share my story or share my truth. But it does. I get nervous and I'm afraid. And that's because I have that fear of, well, how are they going to receive me? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to laugh at me? Like all that. And it's so unconscious though, because I just shove it down. I don't even look at it. I just feel the biological reaction to it, which is nerves, right?
Yeah. That surprises me that you say that, Vanessa, because you're so, sort of adept at writing very well-spoken, your blog, right? And you wrote something about, I think it was on Facebook, where you said, I was nervous to post this. And it is interesting how like perspectives, like from an outside perspective, from my perspective, I was surprised that you were nervous to post that, because you seem you're a very good leader. You coordinate our group and guide the discussions, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting how other people can see us so differently than we see ourselves, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so that's how my ego comes up, is the judgment. And what you were saying too, Christine, about being right. Yeah. And Tom's even called me out on that, only because I asked him. I'm always asking him, I'm like, where can I prove? And that's one of the things he said, is he's like, you don't always have to get it right. He's like, it's okay. You don't always have to be right.
Right.
Yeah. And I've even caught myself a few times in discussion with people, and as they're saying something, I'll hear my thoughts go, no, you're wrong. But
yeah, right.
that help? Like making other people wrong, it does not help at all.
Right.
But I'm aware of it now, so I'll catch myself, and then I'll be like, dude, let that go. Let your ego go. Just hold
Well,
space.
you know, I even think it's not just I think it's most obvious for me in conversation with people, but even the need to be like the perfectionism that I think people, certainly I suffer from, is like, if you really think about, like, that's just the need to be right, you know, with whatever you're doing in your life, right? And I do feel like I'm a little bit more like, okay, you know what? I made a mistake. Like, that's okay, you know? And to really be like, it's in the big picture, because we're just this little tiny grain of sand on a huge beach, right? The fact that I put the wrong trim on the wrong pillows doesn't matter. You know, I'm not a bad person because of it, you know? Like, I made silly mistakes, so.
That's how the big picture comes into play and how it's helpful for sure. Did you guys have anything else from that chapter before we move on to the next?
No.
No.
Okay. I did. I had a lot underlined, but
Really?
I won't. Yeah, I don't know why. I guess just this part. So the last page and the second to last paragraph, very last line, it says, you are encouraged to pursue and self-direct the evolution of your consciousness. And then the very last sentence where he says, lighthearted fun is an important component of learning.
Yeah. I had that too. I liked that.
Yeah. I really like that you are encouraged to pursue and self-direct the evolution of your consciousness, because to me that's really empowering, right? It puts one in the driver's seat of their own growth practice, their own evolution, their own mission. It gives us back kind of it gives us back our power, because I think so often what we do is we hand it over, we disown it, and we do that by, you know, being the victim and saying that we're not in control, we're helpless, and that everyone else is the reason for why I get upset, this and that. But when he reminds us to pursue and self-direct the evolution of our consciousness, I feel like that helps us to not fall back into those old patterns and conditions of blaming other people, of playing the victim, of playing small too, of being stuck in the little ego drama. I really liked that reminder. It was helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I only had one thing highlighted in this whole chapter.
Oh yeah, what was that?
It was near the beginning, the second paragraph. It says, like, our local reality represents just one branch of many divergent probable realities. Right? To me, that was like, you know, using the metaphor of the sand, is like we're just one little speck in the sand, and there's so many other realities out there that it'd be nice to experience, but you know, it doesn't matter. You are where you are right now. And just live it fully. Right? Yeah,
and there is a purpose to your existence, and
exactly.
Yeah, and being where you are right now. And just remembering and acknowledging that purpose, I think, is what helps us put things in light,
right,
in context, and what helps us not get stuck in the weeds and lost in the details and tripping over our ego. Right?
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. Next chapter, 47. So this is all about the psi uncertainty, which you know Daniel loved.
I loved it.
Anything from the first two pages?
I'm not sure if this is in the second page or not, but it's, where can I start? There's a paragraph that starts with, the creation of a conscious entity follows the same rules as the creation of any entity except conscious entities that have the ability to modify themselves with free will intent. So if you go a little bit further down, it says, however, the attributes of consciousness, a sentient entity can create its own internal constraints. The internal constraints that a sentient entity typically imposes upon self will inevitably limit the evolutionary potential of that entity. Some self-imposing constraints may appear to serve as a temporary purpose, and some are obviously more dysfunctional, unprofitable than others, but all must eventually be removed by the entity if it is to actualize its full potential. I love that. It's just that if we, as a individual, conscious, we have our own beliefs and things like that, and that does not allow us to grow and learn, evolve as quickly as people who are at a higher conscious state and lower entropy, right? So the more willing we are to learn and grow and take risks, then the faster we can become a higher state of consciousness and lower entropy, and have lower entropy. It's be willing and taking risks, right?
Yeah, stepping outside of the comfort zone.
Exactly.
What does that mean to you when you hear that self-imposed, self-constraint, inner constraints? What is that? How do you define that? How do you interpret that?
It's as you live your journey, as you live one day at a time, you see things, and you might create certain beliefs around that, what you see around the environment, and whatever these beliefs you create within yourself, those are the things that hold you back, right?
Yeah. Okay, some beliefs. How about you guys, Christine and Kenji? What comes to mind when you hear that self-imposed inner constraint?
For me, what's coming up is that, it's kind of how I view ego is, your mind or your ego has a job to do, and it does not want to give that job up. And so it is constantly coming up with all kinds of creative ways in which to distract you from your higher self. And it's learning to navigate through your ego to get to your higher self. And for me anyway, it's constantly upping its game. It's making, and so, which makes me, I guess, try even harder, I guess. So, I don't know. It's kind of like this box we put ourselves in, and the box is getting bigger, but it's still a box. So I'm just trying to figure it out.
That's what we're all here doing, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? Not just us, but everybody here.
Oh, yeah. And that's the game. Essentially, kind of, I think that as we try and figure it out, is that's, somebody puts it out, everybody talks about all the trials, the tribulations that we go through in life. But out of all those trials and tribulations is how we grow. It's how we evolve. We could not do it without those hardships that happen, and how we deal with them, and how we let them affect us. And so they are there, and they may be uncomfortable for us, but it's key to the growth of not only us, but the whole larger consciousness system.
And what you said just there, Kenji, I think bringing it back to Daniel, the part that you mentioned, he says, some self-imposed constraints may appear to serve a temporary purpose, and some are obviously more dysfunctional. So what you're talking about, Kenji, in that some of those constraints, they serve us because they help us overcome challenges. They help us be able to relate to others who are also suffering from those constraints as well.
Exactly, but I think one of the issues is that they helped us on that when we created that belief. They helped us at the time, but then that situation can end, but we still hold on to those beliefs, and we still it's like we need to kind of upgrade all the time and evolve out of those beliefs, because what served me as a young boy being having a hard time with a bully at school or something like that has nothing to do with where I am at this time in my life, but that belief system affects how I still interact with people today. So it's about like letting that go.
Absolutely, yeah. And then he says, some of them are dysfunctional, and that's when it becomes dysfunctional, is when it continues to rule our world and rule our life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christine, what about for you?
When he was talking about self-imposed constraints, that to me sounds like what I would call like your issues or your baggage, right? That you have in life or you carry with you. So, they're probably they're just, fears about, similar to what we talk about. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. These different things that you might think about yourself. That those are your constraints.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. What do you think? I do want to talk about beliefs when we get a chance, which is like the next sentence down.
Yeah. No, let's go on to the next sentence.
Well, okay. So or the next paragraph. So after we talk the self-imposed constraints, some of which are beliefs, right? I said issues. It could be you have beliefs about yourself, right? Or constraints. When you get to the middle of the next paragraph, it says, when you are caught in a belief trap, have a belief, you create an additional internal constraint that further limits the capacity and function of your consciousness. So what I would like to talk, and what I wrote down here is, so I know he talks about beliefs are limiting. They are not helpful. But what if I have a belief that people are fundamentally good? That's my belief, right? And that's how I approach the world. And to me, I would be like, that's a super positive thing. I don't see how that's limiting. Right?
Yeah. So, yeah, people have asked them this before. They've said, aren't there some good beliefs? Like, why do you subscribe to that idea that all beliefs need to be removed? Because there's some empowering beliefs, such as the one that you just stated, or one that, I'm a confident person, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And I can't really remember exactly how he answered it, but my understanding of that is that to have a belief, we may feel or think that it serves us. So let's use yours. All people are good. Is that what you said?
People are fundamentally good.
Okay. So if we have this belief, it sounds like it's a positive belief. All people are fundamentally good. That could limit us because, one, if we meet somebody who may appear not to be fundamentally good, but we have this belief that they are good, well, then my reality is not actually matching my belief. And that could cause some disconsonance. It could cause this kind of like friction, like, well, they're supposed to be good. I thought all people were good. This person's not good. Like, how can I change them? So you can go there. The other thing is it could be limiting in that there could be something even beyond that. So beyond the idea or belief of all people are fundamentally good, there could be an even deeper reality to that, a deeper, a bigger perspective of that. It could be, all people are fundamentally good. That you could see that everybody's separate because everybody's an individual person. So then you're still seeing somebody not as an aspect of consciousness or an extension of yourself, but you're seeing them as a separate individual. So he's saying just don't have any beliefs. Just be open to everything, and don't ever structure a belief around what you think it may be, because it may not necessarily be that way. But if you form a belief, you close yourself off to any other possibility. Yeah.
Well, but okay, all right. So I think that what I get confused by is where when you say something like you don't have any beliefs, right? Like, how do you function in the world without having any opinions about anything, right?
I think that's its ideal state, is not to have any beliefs, but I think we're human, and it's very tough not to have any beliefs, right?
Well, or like, I don't get it. Like, I mean, what?
I think
I was just going to say on the belief thing, and this comes kind of more from the law of attraction, but and I'm going to use money because that's a much more charged belief system that we all kind of have more in common, I think. But so we could have the belief that, you know, we want $1 million, or we want to be rich, or, I mean, that our whole belief system is, you know, geared towards having money. But then we have a lot of conflicting belief systems around money too. It's like possibly that you know, rich people are greedy and selfish, or there's also a lot of negative connotations. I mean, you can have
the root of all evil, and, you know,
yeah, exactly, or just that always coming from lack, because most of us, you know, aren't in the top, you know, 1%, and so we're always coming from lack and paycheck to paycheck and fear of being poor, and also the whole self-worth thing is, I'm not worthy of having this money. So consciously we're saying, oh yeah, I want to be rich, I want to have lots of money, I believe I can do it, you know, but you know, and you go, all these other people have done it and I can do it too, but then you have all these conflicting belief systems that are pulling back against that one. Mm-hmm. So you may say that and you may believe that, but in reality, there's this huge conflict that's going on between your different belief systems.
Yeah.
So you're saying that having beliefs causes more conflict?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
You're saying that having that belief around money is causing conflict?
I'm saying you're having competing belief systems. You're having one where you want a lot of money, and you can think of all you're like, if I had $1 million, I'd donate it to the poor, whatever altruistic thing, you know, you come up with. You have this belief system, but then you have all of these competing belief systems that are keeping you from having that. Mm-hmm. And so if you're able to let go of those, and I mean, there are processes where you can learn to do this kind of stuff. Joe Gallenberger's Inner Vegas class is an excellent example of that. I don't know if you've done that, or MC Squared, but that's all about on manifesting and attracting, you know, that stuff, and letting go of the belief systems that you have that pull you from that. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I'm just saying it's more of you're just having different belief systems pulling at you, which kind of keeps you stuck, so to speak.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Christine, is you talked about how you said, how can we walk around without having an opinion? Like, how do we, you know, what everybody just is kind of like, doesn't have an opinion, doesn't have a voice, doesn't have any ideas. Like, how can you do that? Right. And I think there's definitely there's a way to discern between belief and opinion, right? Because when you look at Tom, he has a lot of opinions. He has a really big opinion on the nature of reality. But that's the key, is it's just an opinion. It's not a belief. And he says, I remember in the beginning of the book, he's like, if it makes you feel any better, I don't believe any of this stuff either that he's writing about. Because he's like, don't believe it. Yeah, it's an opinion. It could be. There's a high probability. But I'm also just saying that there could be a different way too. And I'm open to that. Because that's where dogma comes in, is when you start believing something 100% and nothing else can be true. It shuts you off from bringing in any other information or any other data. Mm-hmm. That's why he goes belief blindness, right? Because then you're blind to the truth when you believe one thing to be true.
So how do we, with that in mind, saying that I don't have any beliefs, right? And we're gonna work towards getting rid of all these beliefs, right? How what is the point of reading this book, right?
I'm on the light. Sorry, guys. It's dark in here. Oh, that's the fan.
Well, is it? I'm sorry, but is that what he's advocating? Is he advocating eliminating all belief?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
I think so, Vanessa, right?
Yeah, get rid of belief.
It's not get rid of beliefs that don't work for you. It's just get rid of beliefs altogether.
Yeah.
Or is it more that you just believe something 90% to always leave room for something else?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, agree with something if it resonates with you, but then leave room to discover something else that may resonate with you.
But don't let that belief hold you back from experiencing a greater life, right? A better life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. I could go along with that, but getting rid of belief altogether is, that's a reach for me.
Well, and that's what keeps us stuck too, is when we believe, for example, what the biggest belief that we have is that this physical matter reality is actually a physical matter reality, and that this is all there is. And so for those of us who can't OBE or you or these types of things, it's because we're so indoctrinated in this materialistic belief, believing in materialism, right? That's something that we've grown up to believe in.
But you believe that there's more, right? Like that there's a possibility for a larger, you know what I mean? It's like, so for my personal experience is that I have had a couple of spiritual experiences, right? Which would lead me to believe that there's something greater out there, right? So is that limiting too, to say, oh, I think there's a bigger reality out there?
Well, no, that's expansive, right? And that opens us up to exploring other possibilities. Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of semantics too, because now, like, if I don't know, like Daniel in our circle back in Vancouver, whenever somebody says belief, they're like, oh, but I mean, I don't believe it. I'm just resonate with it. So,
that word is almost like taboo, right?
Yeah, it's like a taboo word to say belief. We're taking it a little too far. But we should move on because it's a pretty big chapter. And we're on page 2 of that chapter. So anything else from page 2 or page 3 of that chapter?
I think he just, a little further down, he goes, adding unprofitable internal constraints, belief, fear, and ego to your consciousness is analogous to scattering bricks and concrete blocks on a highway.
Yeah.
Great picture there.
It is. It's a really good metaphor. Hey?
Yeah.
Adding unprofitable internal constraints to your consciousness is analogous to scattering bricks and concrete blocks on a highway. Yeah. Because, okay, so I like that. I interpret it as this experience packet, right? This lifetime that we have is a path. It's a road. It's an opportunity for us to travel and experience this lifetime so that we can learn and we can grow. And so that's what he's saying. It's like a highway that we can go down. But if we have this fear and this ego and this beliefs, it makes it so much more difficult to travel on this highway. So he's putting in there, it's like when you scatter bricks on the highway, then now you got to dodge all these bricks and you're going to get a flat tire and your car might break down, you know what I mean? So,
well, yeah, to me, it's like you got to move much slower to get where you want to go, right? Whereas if everything was paved, you should just go, like, put the pedal to the metal and away you go, right?
Right.
Whereas you have all these constraints. It's like, okay, what's the next step? Okay, is there something there that's going to hold me back? So you got to live it cautiously. Whereas, why bother? Why do you need to live cautiously when you can, go full speed ahead?
Yeah. So that's why it's so important for us to start removing those bricks from the highway, start getting rid of the fear and the ego. And that's what I love. Go ahead, sorry.
It can be tough, though.
It can be tough. Yeah, it can be tough. What helps us is when we know our purpose and our mission and we see the big picture and we keep bringing ourselves back to the big picture. That really helps us to remove the fear and the ego. We remember that's the mission. That's the purpose, is get rid of the fear. That's it. Like, that's what it all boils down to, is just get rid of the fear. That's what we're here to do, right? Anything else from that page?
I did underline the next paragraph down. It says the energy of consciousness has the potential to organize itself more effectively, to develop more complete and brighter awareness, generate and creatively utilize understanding, feeling, caring, love, and directed mental effort in a way that is useful and helpful to itself and to other consciousnesses struggling to evolve. I liked that.
I like that.
Nice summary of what we're trying to do.
I had the next sentence underlined too, where he says, each individuated consciousness generates its own unique path toward increasing or decreasing profitability yet all expressions that reflect the purpose and the process of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
I like that because what that does for me is it helps me be compassionate and understanding and accept others for their journey, no matter what that journey looks like. No matter if it looks like a spiritual journey, a religious journey, a scientific journey, a bumbling journey where they're kind of bumping around. Everybody has their own unique path. So just to accept that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to me, like that sentence was like, just go and explore. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You have to explore to figure out if it's right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If wrong, then just get out of that specific state and look at other ways of becoming more profitable.
Exactly.
And maybe not looking at it as right or wrong too, because there is no wrong in reality. It's
Learning,
just,
well, it's you either, what they say is you're either winning or you're learning, right?
yep. And there is because you can't do anything wrong because you're learning whatever you do, you're learning from it and you're evolving. So there is no wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Anything else from that page?
No.
Christine, did you have anything?
I have a lot, but I know we got to move on.
I did too. I know, but I did too.
Yeah.
Like I had this.
Yeah.
I have a lot highlighted too.
Yeah. So, basically kind of he details what the higher entropy characteristics are. I think there's another part where he's like, oh, if you don't worry if you see like some of your own characteristics in there. I think that it's a couple of pages. Anyways, yeah, I'm quite a bit highlighted.
I did too. So I don't even know because I had a whole paragraph highlighted. The next one down. So when he says the entropy within a consciousness system, including an individuated subsystem, represents the unavailability of consciousness energy to do work. The primary work of consciousness is to more effectively organize itself, to take charge of its own evolution, and to increase its overall profitability through self-modification growth. So higher entropy states within consciousness represent unprofitable organization.
Mm-hmm.
The fears, beliefs, dimness, diminished potential, self-centeredness, inability to understand complex interrelationships or see big pictures. Higher entropy results in consciousness systems having less power than can be applied to overcome the inertia of ignorance and ego dysfunctionality. Not decreasing the entropy of consciousness results in squandering of potential. So yeah, I don't know why I had that all highlighted. I don't know what it said. I was just like, what did I highlight here? Yeah.
No, I have most of that underlined too. That it was just sort of, I liked where he says, the primary work of consciousness is to more effectively organize itself. So that is like it sounds like that's another way of saying reducing fears, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's creating lower entropy, right? Lowering your entropy.
Yep.
So you can grow and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then in this next sentence, I had the whole thing underlined too. I won't read it all, but this part right here where he says, the drive or urge to be helpful to and care about others, love, is an innate property of low entropy consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Low entropy consciousness is an effective and powerful consciousness. Yeah, and then just consequently, it's one that represents considerable personal power. Because he talks a lot about how people feel like when you come from this place of love, it's not very powerful, where you kind of allow yourself to be walked all over, you turn the other cheek. But that's not what love is at all. Love is actually really powerful. You're able to function more efficiently when you're coming from a place of love rather than a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, remember how I posted something on Slack about, you know, having a, basically how do you, the conversation regarding dealing with self-centered people, right? And how that can be tiring and whatever. But what I found helpful about that conversation was, we frequently talk about this unconditional love, right? And that you're always sort of, or the objective is to work towards that, right?
Yeah.
And can you, even though somebody will annoy the crap out of you, still love them, right? Like, is that what you're supposed to do? You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you may be exhibiting these behaviors, you may be doing this, but I will love you anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I think someone asked that in one of his YouTube videos. Someone asked about narcissism, and I think his response was, you know what? Love them the way they are.
Right. Yeah.
Just give them a nice big hug and just tell them you love them, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah. He often says too is that you can love everybody, but you don't necessarily need to like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And how I interpret that is if you like somebody, it's normally you like somebody, you like your friends because you agree with them, right? You kind of see the world in very similar ways. You share the same values because they are like you.
Mm-hmm.
So you like people who are like yourself. But and so if you can do that with your friends, but you don't necessarily have to like everybody. You know, I don't like somebody who's going to go murder, you know, someone. I don't agree with that. I don't like it. But then when it comes to love, I see love as acceptance. I can love that person. I can accept them for where they are on their journey. They're very high entropy. They don't know any better, and that's just where they are. I can accept them and be compassionate for that. Yeah. So I just kind of I associate the word love with acceptance and the word like with agree, and then it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does make sense.
Okay, so is there anything else, I guess, from the next page over? Okay, now we're getting into the psi uncertainty principle.
Yeah.
I had something, but it's further down. I don't know if anybody had in the beginning of that next page. It's the third paragraph, the last sentence, where he says, fortunately, the intent and attitude, so mental focus, of the body's owner, right, so our IUOC, our spirit, whatever, has the greatest potential impact. Unfortunately, this attitude is often driven by its fear and the opinions and fears of others. So what he's talking about there is, because he's talking about how your intent can modify future probability, and we all have this, we all have access to this. So other people can heal us, or other people can harm us as well. But then he says, fortunately, you know, I don't have to worry because my intent is going to affect what goes on here more so than anybody else's intent, right? But it's like, but usually because your attitude is driven by fear and ego, you don't have much mental focus. So you can't really, a lot of people can't really do much self-healing or even practice the law of attraction very well because it comes from the intellect rather than the being.
All right. So he's saying you really have the power to heal yourself or to create what you want, but it's other people's influences on you that sort of dictate who you become or what you become.
Or your own influences.
Or your own influence, your fears. Right. But your own fears that are created because of your experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because we're insecure and ego and fear driven, we allow other people's opinions to get the best of us.
Right.
Yeah. So if somebody thinks poorly of me, then I choose to feel bad about myself because it triggers this fear of inadequacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I got rid of that fear of inadequacy and other people chose to see me in a negative light, it wouldn't affect me because I don't have any inadequacy, so it wouldn't trigger that.
Right.
Well, right. And I think that, isn't he talking about a cancer reference here, an example? I think that what it would be harder to, like, you know, heal yourself if you've got family who are freaking out, you know, like everybody's stressed out that you're going to die or they're around you, you know. I mean, I've heard some of these stories about like people who were diagnosed with cancer and they sat in their house and watched funny movies, like, and just laughed and they got better, you know, because they had a real positive, they were experiencing a positive attitude, you know.
Yeah.
Well, in addition, though, though, is what they're doing is they're changing their focus. I mean, yeah, it is a positive attitude, but it might have just as well worked on just doing another activity that keeps your focus off of the illness and because I think that's kind of when you feed that focus of that illness, it attracts more illness essentially.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the one of the mechanisms.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the psi uncertainty principle, maybe we should just kind of hear what everybody's own ideas or thoughts are on this concept. And basically, Kenji, it's just the law of attraction. It's the concept of the law of attraction, right? So
Yes.
How do you perceive that? What's your understanding of the law of attraction? Maybe we'll go around and have everybody share.
You're starting with me?
Sure, yeah.
I'm not sure what Tom's is. I've been following the law of attraction for the last couple of months with Abraham Hicks quite extensively. And so that's my interpretation of law of attraction. So I'm not sure how it differs or what Tom's is. So I don't know where you want me to go with that.
Oh, I just want to hear your personal take on it.
Well, that's kind of what I'm. This whole law of attraction is really new to me, so I'm starting to implement a lot of the thought processes and things, and it started actually with Joe's Vegas and MC Squared workshop as well, because that's that whole same concept, and it's about it's not really what you say or, because, actors and actresses can look really happy, and they could be, pretty miserable on the inside. It's really on how you vibrate, how you feel inside that really determines, and how whatever that vibration is what you attract into your life. And so I'm sure all of us have friends who attract a lot of drama into their lives. That's to me because that's where their focus is, that they're always focusing on that drama, and we're trying to kind of go the other way. We want kind of like a life with a lot of drama, and so that's my kind of basic view on law of attraction. And from what I've been playing with thus far, it's really a pretty amazing thing.
Nice, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Christine?
Well, law of attraction is, similar to what Kenji just said, that, you can draw things towards you, right? But I have to be honest, I wouldn't equate the law of attraction with the psi uncertainty principle. I don't see how they are the same thing. I kind of understood the psi uncertainty principle is that there, an outside energy can interfere and adjust things, like where we would call, he says later on, he would say it would be like a synchronicity, right? But you can't, it has to be like, oh, it just appears that it was random, right? That was how things just ended up and it was a coincidence, as opposed to an outside force intervening and being like, I want you to meet this particular person or this stuff is going to happen, like that That's what my take on the psi uncertainty principle was.
There has to be enough uncertainty.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. How about you, Daniel?
So for me, I always relate it to the secret in terms of the parking spot, because I always get parking spots. And so I went one level deeper, I think, where, I would always go to the mall or on the street. As I approach to where I want to go, a parking spot opens for me. But I thought, I went a little bit further and I thought, okay, what if I'm creating that possibility now? So I'm telepathically communicating with other individual units of consciousness, saying that, hey, I'm driving here. I'm going to be there in about 10 minutes, right? I'm connecting them somehow. I don't know how, but I'm sending a signal to them, and to them they say, okay, maybe in 10 minutes I need to get out. I need to go somewhere. I need to go somewhere else. And within this 10 minutes, they go into the car, they leave. Just at the same time, I'm arriving, right? Yeah. So they pull out, I come in, and I get that parking spot.
Okay. So that's the law of attraction for you. Okay. That's
to me, the law of attraction was, okay, so I attract a parking spot, right? I don't know how it gets it, but I'm thinking, okay, with the uncertainty, the psi factor of uncertainty, I'm thinking, well, how do I create this randomness? Because all you're doing is it's just possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Every time increment creates a possibility. So I'm just narrowing down the possibilities. So as I'm sending a signal out to whomever, I'm creating a better opportunity as to what I want, and I'm focusing on that. So it creates, what I'm trying to say here, it create a better chance of that happening, because I'm somehow communicating with these sentient beings or the individuals of consciousness. I'm telling these people that I'm coming. One of you guys will be leaving for me. It happens so many times, so much though.
I'm laughing because, and I can say this to Daniel because I love Daniel and we're buddies, but I'm laughing because earlier in this call, I was saying how sometimes my ego is like, nope, you're wrong. I'm doing that to you right now.
But there's so many times this happens to me where I just pull into a parking spot and someone just leaves.
Right. Okay.
So many times.
And now totally, and that can happen for sure. So now what we're doing is we're saying, this is what happens on the surface. This is what's happening on the movie screen, right? I pull in, my intent is there's going to be a spot. I pull in and there's a spot and it happens. So what we're looking at now is, how the fuck does that happen? How does that happen?
Does it matter how it happens? Maybe it's just, that's my way of.
It doesn't. It doesn't matter how it happens, but that's what book is about. This book is about understanding the mechanics of the nature of reality, right?
It was the big cheese. The big cheese made it happen.
I'm actually, I didn't think we come to this, but I'm going to try to explain my understanding of it. I've never have before, except for the last night we were at TMI. Brad and I got together and we were storyboarding it because we wanted to explain it to people in a really easy to understand manner. And I haven't visited it since then, which was like, I don't know, 2 months ago or something, 3 months ago, more than that, I guess. Anyway, so this is my understanding. Okay, so going back to, this is a really good example that you're using there, Daniel, in terms of you have an intent that there's going to be a parking spot available when you pull up. Mm-hmm. And then sure enough, you pull up and there's a parking spot available. Okay, law of attraction, that's great. So now we're looking at, okay, how does that happen? Mm-hmm. My first introduction to this law of attraction was Joe Dispenza. Does anybody know Joe Dispenza? Yeah. Kenji, you know Joe? No?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, just Joe Dispenza?
I didn't hear that. What?
Oh, are you familiar with Joe?
I've heard of him, yes.
Okay.
I am familiar with them. I have not gone to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I went to one of his workshops, and so the way that he described the law of attraction, and it's actually pretty clever the way he describes it, and simple. But he says that your thoughts send out an electrical signal to this quantum field, okay, and then your feelings send out a magnetic signal, okay. So your thoughts plus your feelings send out this electrical magnetic signal in the field, and they pull in whatever it is you want to manifest into your life. Okay, so when I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, totally makes sense. Now I understand law of attraction. That logically makes sense to me. But then if we look at Tom Campbell's model, fields don't exist. There are no fields because everything's just data, right? So, and actually when I told Tom about Joe's model, Tom laughed. And he's like, oh, Joe. Probably shouldn't say that when this is being recorded and going on YouTube, but you did say that, Tom. Just, anyway. So, okay. The way that now I'm understanding it is that this reality that we live in is not a material-based reality, right? We all get that. It's not deterministic. It's not made of matter. It's actually a probabilistic reality. Okay, it's a probabilistic reality. Okay, so with that, everything is dependent on the probability of it happening. So let's take a look at this driving this parking space example. Now you have this idea that you're going to pull into the mall and there's going to be a parking space available for you. Now if you look at it, you think, okay, what's the probability of that actually happening? Maybe there's a probability of it, there's a chance, it's like a 50% chance of that happening, right? Because there's somebody parked in there right now. So that the chance of it being a blue Toyota parked in there, that's like a 30% probability. And then the chance of somebody coming in front of you and getting that spot, that's like a 20% probability, right? So you have like 50, 30, 20% probability. Now, because your intent modifies future probability, when you focus your intent on wanting to change that, you're focusing from the being level, you're increasing the probability, the likelihood that it's going to be available. Right. So that 50% now turns into 70% because you have this powerful intent, and the other ones diminish. Okay, so what happens is when you pull into there, you take a random draw from the probability database, so that the 70% is mixed in with the other 20% and 10%. There's but they're all mixed in, but the likelihood of it being available is 70%. So when you take that draw, you're most likely to get a data stream that's going to say, oh, there's a parking spot available. Yeah, so it's all about you raising the likelihood, raising the probability of that spot being available through your intent, through your being level intent.
That does sound very similar, just slightly different language to what how Joe described it, right?
How Joe Dispenza described it?
Well, he's using fields and electromagnetic energy to describe it, when Tom says that there's no such thing as that, right? He's talking about waves. There's no such thing as waves.
Yeah. Tom's saying that most people, they see that they see the result and then they make up a story to explain that result. They're not actually looking at what's happening. It's like Rupert Sheldrake in his morphogenic field. There's actually no such thing as a morphogenic field, but he tries to explain why dogs can sense, or why dogs can sense that their owners are coming home, and then because that happens, that's a fact. That's the result that we see. That happens. So then to explain that phenomena, Rupert goes on to say, oh, it's because of this morphogenic field. We're all connected through this field. But it's actually, that's just a story to explain the phenomena. It's not what's really happening. What's really happening is we're consciousness and we're all connected. So of course they can sense that. Right?
Okay, this is where I feel like I get a little bit like, I don't believe that this is the end-all be-all answer, right? And Rupert Sheldrake's is equally as valid as is Joe Dispenza's explanation. Do you know what I mean? I think it's those are equally as valid pathways, right? And when you say that, Rupert Sheldrake, he's making up a story. I mean, all we do is make up stories, right? Like, we have to, in order to explain things that are not explainable and they are beyond language, right? You're kind of just doing the best that we can do, right? When you tell a story or you make a metaphor or you say a metaphor,
Yeah, it makes sense. And you're right. And maybe Tom's just got another story. And he does. Tom has another story. And I guess what it is whose story do you resonate more with? And if you resonate with Joe's or with Rupert's, that's great if that works for you. There's no need to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that it does. I feel like when
Or you can.
What?
Huh?
What?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was saying that and there's no reason. And I mean, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking pieces from a lot of different teachers and putting them into my own story, so to speak. You know,
Right.
and I'm just,
And you can associate. You can associate based on what you know, right? Like, we were in high school. We were taught about magnetic fields and electrical energies, and so that's how we learn, because we understand what that is. So then, Joe Dispenza says, okay, yeah, everything. That's how we track things, through electrical energy and magnetic fields. We understand that because electrical energy, you got your positive, negative energies they attract. In your magnetic fields, you got your north and south pole they attract, right? It's easy for us to visualize that.
And Tom would say that's just all data.
Yeah, exactly.
Battery, plug it in. Okay, let's move on, guys, because we only have, I think, a half an hour left. Anything else from the next page?
Where are we? I'm sorry. What page are we on? Like four.
It's 193 for me. I don't know what it is for you guys. It's
What's at the top?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in. At the top it says state at the time of measurement.
Right, thank you. 443.
The second paragraph down, very last sentence, he says, when one removes the challenge, one removes the opportunity as well. Mm-hmm. And that kind of ties into, Kenji, what you were talking about earlier when we were saying that, all these kind of, I love the saying that something along the lines of our adversities become our greatest gifts, right? Because we learn so much from them and we can share them. And so I like that, because what he's referencing that to, though, is he's saying, oftentimes we want to heal people, but sometimes it's not up to us to heal people, because they need that challenge in their life so they can learn something valuable. Yeah, I just liked that. Just because yeah.
Sorry, what read again? What's one of the paragraphs? The top paragraph. I'm not sure.
State at the time of measurement. Typically, the most likely state at the time of measurement is picked unless there are several states of equal probability.
Okay. Keep going on. Keep going.
Yeah, just that. So I was talking about the second paragraph, last sentence. When one removes the challenge, one removes the opportunity as well. Yeah. I like that reminder too, because it's part of the big picture. Like, if we see somebody who's really struggling, let's say, who maybe is, I don't know, handicapped to some degree, and then we feel like, oh, that poor person, and we feel so bad for them. But if we remember, well, that challenge is actually, it's a learning opportunity that they're gaining so much from. We can kind of see them in this different light with this bigger picture understanding. And then it doesn't turn into sadness. It more turns into appreciation for the growth that comes with that challenge. Yeah. And with ourselves as well, too, right? So if we have a challenging situation, rather than playing like a pity party, just to see it like, oh, this is great. Like, I can learn.
And again, I mean, Well, and then again, also just on that example you used for, though, I kind of wonder, though, if it's whether we feel sorry for them or if we're feeling guilty about being grateful that that's not happening and that didn't happen to us. That's that would be another possible way of looking at it.
I think it's never about them. It's all about us and how we feel against what they just said or did, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it comes back to us. If we're feeling like sad or any kind of negative energy, it's because we're seeing it from our little picture perspective and making it.
Yeah, Vess, I feel like if you that sort of idea that if you look at your challenges in life as opportunities for growth can radically change your experience of life, because you're like, okay, this is tough, but what am I going to learn from it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and one thing that I'm learning about in terms of emotions lately, which I find really kind of intriguing, is that emotions are really just indicators on being in or out of alignment with source, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's like we have the free will to go do everything that we want to go do in life, but if you do things and then you have these immense like negative emotions, fear, hate, or whatever those things on particular things, that's just kind of your higher self communicating with you that that's not really the right path. Mm-hmm. And the more we can stay in alignment, the better we're feeling all the time about things is when we're in alignment with source and we're kind of on our right path. So I've been kind of looking at that as kind of like as a indicator of direction to go in life when I need to make decisions about things now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that maybe negative emotions, like we're moving in this direction, and then you have a negative emotion, sort of it pulls you to a different tangent, and then it's up to our free will or choice to then become aware of it, and then we try to pull us back into the right direction that we're trying to go to. And if we can't, we go sideways, right?
Yeah, well, I think righteousness is a really strong power people have about things. They'd rather be right than necessarily doing the right thing, so to speak. So we can stay in that. I mean, some people do that. Some people lead very angry lives their entire lives, or depressed, or this or that. And they're just staying on, they're just being right. It's like an ego-driven life, and the reason they're feeling that way is they're just totally out of alignment with the higher self. And so that's why I used to have this thing that the universe keeps giving you louder and louder messages until you're like hit over the head with a 2x4 that change what you're doing. And so, and emotions are are another example of those kind of indicators.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think emotions are the feedback, right? That's our feedback.
Yes.
It's feedback mechanism to show us where we need to course correct.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily like the actions that we're doing, but it's our perspective, how we're perceiving things, how we're choosing to view ourselves and others and situations. It helps us to course correct our attitude, right? Yeah, because it's never it's never about what's happening on the screen. It's about the actual character, the being that's playing that avatar.
We have to be aware of that, though, right?
To be aware of that, yeah.
Yeah, that's how emotions make us. That's how they make us aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I asked Tom in Vancouver. I don't remember Daniel, but I said, "How do you?" Because I want to know the progress. I want to see if I'm actually growing. I'm putting in all this work. Like, how do I measure? How do I measure my entropy?
Yeah.
And he said, well, there's one way actually. He said it's through your emotions, right? It's through your emotions. If you feel joy and peace and empathy and compassion, you're on track. You have a low entropy state. If you feel anger, upset, frustration, jealousy, whatever it might be, then you got some work to do. So just keep checking in with your feelings, your emotions.
Yep.
Mm. Okay, so let's move on. What else do we have here? Anything else from that page? There's the next paragraph down, actually 2 paragraphs down. In the middle, he says, I'm talking about directly and precisely altering the probable future with the intentional power of a focused, clear, and coherent mind. I guess I just highlighted that because it's a reminder to me of how important it is to have a focused, clear, and coherent mind, not one that's jumping all over the place. And for me personally, mine does jump a lot because of, I think I attribute a lot of it to my sugar addiction. And so it's like all over the place. But I'm okay with it though, because I mean, in terms of altering the future probable database, I'm pretty okay with whatever happens. So I don't really utilize the law of attraction that much. I don't focus my intent to make things happen. Yeah, I just kind of trust whatever happens, it'll be good. And it usually is. Yeah. But I know it's wise to have, I mean, one thing I do want to happen is I want to lower the entropy of my consciousness. So I think by having a clear and coherent, focused mind, I'll be able to do that a lot more so. Because that's one thing we do have control over are the constraints on this consciousness.
Do you think that because you trust what's going to happen to you, is that because you have a strong intent?
Yeah, maybe that's a strong intent that everything that happens I know will be good.
Yeah.
And maybe that intent is really strong that that's what happens.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That does bring up an interesting question about like if you're, should you be using the law of attraction, right?
Yeah.
Because does that, by doing that, not like getting a parking spot, Daniel. You know what I mean?
I love using that analogy, right? Because I can really relate to it.
But
Everyone's really,
I think
unless they're taking the spot.
You should have whatever parking spot you want. Right? But I mean, major life sort of things, right? Like if you really do that, are you in essence denying yourself an opportunity to learn from whatever was supposed to happen, right?
I don't think so. No, I mean, we're co-creators, right? So we can definitely play in this world of form, this material world. We can play and we can attract what it is we want. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
I think Tom says that we want to create the most profitable situation for us as we grow as a conscious being. So using your intent, creating a more probable outcome.
But aren't the things that people typically want
ego-based?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the probable situation that you want has to come from the being level, right? Not from the ego, not from the intellect level.
This is true.
Like I'm going to want $1 million, or I'm going to want.
But what do you want to do with the $1 million, right? Ask yourself that. What do you want to do? Who do you want to serve? Who do you want to help with $1 million?
But it doesn't matter.
The money, the $1 million is just a tool to get you, your actual being level. What do you want to do faster?
What's your question, Christine?
Should you be using the law of attraction?
So I don't know.
I would say yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And the reason why
that's an open-ended question. Very open-ended.
There are millions of people who are using it, and from just experience over my lifetime, if I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, I'm going to be told about it, and that message is going to be getting louder and louder until I stop doing it. And that's just not happening with people who use the law of attraction.
So you're saying that if you're not using it the correct way, a higher source will sort of give you a signal that, hey, stop doing it this way, or stop doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an interesting question that you bring up, Christine, because he talks about it a lot in this book. And when Christine, when you say law of attraction, it's kind of any kind of paranormal ability, right? So should you be using law of attraction? Should you be using, I mean, in paranormal, you don't really associate law of attraction with paranormal, but some people would, because it doesn't seem to be a natural ability that your thoughts create your reality. A lot of people think that we're victims; things just happen to us, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, so being able to, should you use the law of attraction? Should you remote view? Should you heal somebody else? Tom talked about this at the Monroe Institute, and I loved his answer because he is able, obviously, to do all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the more you grow and the more you have access to these abilities, the less likely you are to use them, because you realize that things just kind of are the way they are, and that's okay, and it's great. And so he's kind of embodying that whole living gracefully with uncertainty, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see him to lead that way. Because
Go ahead, Vanessa. Sorry.
no, that was it.
I was laughing because when you said, oh, you know, he can do all this stuff, when I was reading this chapter, I'm like, I wonder if, doesn't he always say inquiring egos want to know?
Mhm.
He used that line. And I was like, it would be really great at like the next time I see him speak or whatever, if he would just like bend a spoon or shut a door with his mind. Like just show me that you can do it, you know? But yeah, he does say that, you know, the stronger people are with that, the less he's going to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have this law of attraction ability without even realizing that they have it. I mean, some people, you know, naturally, I mean, I've seen some very rich people who I just haven't a clue how they were able to get all of that money just based on abilities and things, you know, and it's just not about that. It's and they've never even heard of the term law of attraction. It's just something I think that in all of us, and we all have the innate ability to learn it and to use it and to make our lives better.
And I don't know how helpful it was when I kind of said the law of attraction is paranormal, because it's actually, well, none of this is paranormal. It's all normal, but we just perceive it to be paranormal.
Exactly.
And especially the law of attraction, that's an aspect of the rule set, because that's really important for us to see how we need to change our ways. So the whole feedback thing, you know, we have an intent, and that intent comes true, it manifests, and then we get to see if it's good or if it's bad, if we need to change our intent, right? Yeah. So if we have an intent, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and one key thing I think about the law of attraction is that I think morality plays no issue in the law of attraction, because, and I'll use kind of an extreme example, if you look at somebody like Hitler in World War II, he attracted a lot of really negative stuff that happened during that time period. So it doesn't matter if it's an altruistic period or whatever. I mean, if you are a master of the law of attraction, even whether you realize it or not, you can move mountains, you know, essentially, either for the good or not. Mm-hmm. So that's just, I think, something to be mindful of.
Yeah, it's part of this rule set, is that your intent modifies future probability. That's how this reality works. So yeah, whether you're aware of it or not, it's just when you're aware of it, you're a lot more conscious and you're not victim. Yeah. You're empowered. Okay, guys, 25 minutes. We still have about 10 pages, 15. Anything from the next page, or the next 2 pages? So 195 for me. I don't know, Christine, you have the, at the top it says physical matter. The mystical belief requires
445.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually had something on that page at the very end, the almost last paragraph. and it says, learning how to be sentient in NPMR does not represent a new skill that must be mastered. It simply occurs spontaneously after self-imposed constraints are removed. It is unlearning that is required.
Oh yeah, I had that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought about how, like, because, you know, you talk about you can't do OBE, out-of-body stuff, and it's like, you know, and I can't either. I certainly can't, but or I don't think that I can. But is it because I don't think I can that I can, or it's because my consciousness is too high entropy to get out of body? You know, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I asked Tom that too when I was like, dude, why can't I get out of body, man? And then I'm like, isn't it true that the lower your quality, I mean, the lower your entropy, the higher your quality of consciousness, and the more likely you are to be able to remote view and OBE and all these things. And he's like, yeah, that's the natural byproduct of becoming a more evolved consciousness.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, so you're saying I'm just a high entropy And he laughed and he's like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. So I think what it is some of these things, I mean, they're not that important. Getting out of body isn't that important. What's important is having compassion for others, you know, seeing where other people are coming from, relating to them, seeing the big picture, and pushing our ego aside so we can actually connect with others. That's what's important, right?
Yep.
So if we're able to do those things, then that shows us that our quality of consciousness is growing, you know, that we are lowering our entropy.
It's interesting what you just said there, because you know, Vanessa, you know that I have these coffee meetings with people or Zoom meetings with people, all strangers and everything, and in these conversations I've been speaking with them for like 2-3 hours at a time, right?
Oh, wow.
No agenda, and we just talk about one thing that leads to another subject to another subject to another subject. These are all strangers I've been talking to.
And Daniel, what is that, a project that you're working on?
Yeah, it's to the end of the year, where like in October was meeting people face to face locally. In November was people in North America, and now it's people all over the world. And I just have a nice chat with them. And I said, no agenda. And I don't talk to you about what I do as a business. Sometimes they ask, and I just tell them I'm a coach. I don't pitch them anything. And we just have great conversations. They open up to me. One person was telling me how she was suicidal about 18 months ago. I mean, a stranger, who would tell someone that, you know? But it was really neat just hearing that from her, and I got a bit teary-eyed when she told me that too, right?
Sure.
But I was just, you know, talking to someone, seeing them, getting the body language, and just being able to speak with them authentically. That was really cool. Like like what Vanessa says, check the ego at the door, right? And that's what I do with every single conversation.
And are you doing something with that, or is it just
it may become a book down the road?
Yeah,
it's my experiences, right? Like I'm an introvert, and it's just me stepping out of my comfort zone and trying to have deep, meaningful conversations with people. So,
Nice.
pretty cool.
Very cool.
You can probably exercise all those positive characteristics that Vanessa just listed, like, you know, being compassionate and, you know, seeing people authentically.
Yeah, that's what I practice when I'm talking to them, right?
Yeah.
I don't judge them for who they are. I'm just listening.
Have you guys seen the movie Patch Adams?
Is that the doctor where he's laughter and things like that? He's
based on a story. Yeah, with Robin Williams.
Yes.
Robin Williams is Patch.
I've seen about it. I've heard about it. I haven't watched the movie, actually. I should watch
really
it.
good movie.
What's your takeaway?
Yeah, there's a part where Robin Williams is reminded, or he's told to look past what you see. So look beyond what you see, right? You'll see something on the surface, but he says, but look past it. Who here has seen the movie?
I barely
I
remember
have.
it. Yeah.
It's been a long.
It's been a long time, yeah. It's when he's in the mental institute. It's based on a true story. He's in the mental institute, and some crazy, well, not crazy guy, but some patient in the mental institute keeps going up to people and going, "How many do you see? How many do you see?" And he's holding up fingers, and everybody's like, "3, man." He's like, "Oh, you idiot! You're so stupid." And then finally, Patch goes to his room, and he's like, "How many do you see?" And then Patch is like, 3. And then the patient's like, "No, look beyond the fingers." And then when he looks beyond it, they kind of become fuzzy and out of focus. And he's like, "Oh, 6." And he's like, "That's right, 6." He's like, "Look past what you see. Look beyond what you see. Look past the problem and see the solution." Right. Anyway, that saying has really stuck with me. Look past what you see, because oftentimes when we see a person, we may only see our kind of judgment, our story, and what kind of everybody else sees. And an example is in this course that I'm teaching. There's a particular student who, when I first saw him, I saw what everybody else saw was, "Oh, I think he's got maybe he's slow, and I think he's got issues and whatnot." And I kept seeing that, and then I learned more about him and his background, his history, and where he comes from, and was able to kind of see past the story or what everybody else saw, and that really allowed me to kind of connect with him. So actually living that and experiencing it is quite profound, because it opened me up to a lot more compassion than I never had in the first place. And I talk about this all the time, talk about compassion and loving, and yet I didn't do it. I don't do it. It's not my go-to. It's not my default. When I first meet people, I project, and I see what the story I choose to tell myself is. So just having that kind of awareness to look beyond it, to see past what I initially see and see more, has really just kind of deepened my ability to connect with people. Yeah.
Nice.
That actually reminds me of, are you ever read any of Brene Brown's books?
Yeah, I love Brene Brown.
I love Tara. She's great. So she says, people are hard to hate up close. So get closer. So it's just sort of very similar to what you're saying, that like, once you step a little bit closer and you get to know somebody a little bit authentically, it's hard to be as judgmental,
Yeah. I always say to myself, see yourself in their shoes.
Right?
Yeah. It really surprised me that I did that at first. Like, I'm like, wow, I totally just judged him and like labeled him. And I talk about not doing that all the time, but there was a perfect example of, old conditions of a belief that beliefs are really hard to identify until we're aware that we have these beliefs, right? So, yeah, so like you were saying, Christine, just being immersed in this kind of this dialogue and this material, it really helps to remind me of what's important. I think I appreciate that space a lot. Okay, for our last 15 minutes and 10 pages, anything for the rest of this chapter? We're not going to stay on this chapter next week, guys. So anything else in this chapter, what stood out for you?
Maybe we should talk about the 3 paths a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was a big part.
Yeah. So which path are you on? So Kenji, do you remember this? The path, the warrior's path, the path of surrender, and the path of service?
Yes, it rings a bell. I don't remember a lot about it. It rings a bell. Are we stating what path we're on?
Yeah, or just sharing how it kind of relates to us. It shows up in our lives. Who wants to kind of give an overview of what the paths are? 3 paths.
I can do it.
Sure.
Go for it.
So the path of knowledge is also known as the warrior's path. And that is, I would suppose that is more like learning on an intellectual level, right? And then the path of service is, as he says, doing good deeds and being helpful. And the path of surrender is, I think, more of like a religious
More spiritual, he says.
More spiritual path. You have give yourself up to a spiritual concept or being, or to the expression of a more perfect spiritual values. And he said this is the traditional religious path that transcends the ego by dedication and devotion to higher ideals and values.
I'm a little unclear on how you can get to how you can take the path of surrender without first being on the warrior's path. I think the warrior's path has to lead to the path of surrender, because that's just how it works. I mean, it takes
no specific.
It takes a warrior's heart. What?
I don't. He said. I think he said there's no specific order. But
yeah, he said everybody's kind of a little bit of all of it, but they're mostly dominantly and more so in one area. And Kenji, he's talking about people in the West. Us, we're usually predominantly on the warrior's path, because that's trying to understand things with their intellect. Whereas people in the West, they surrender. He says a good example of the surrender is like Mother Teresa's the service. Yeah, she's a service where she's always giving. That helps her to evolve. Surrendering to kind of a higher power. Those are like devotees, Buddhists who maybe go into meditation.
Like us.
So where do you guys predominantly find yourselves? Or where would you like to be?
Well, I was very much so on the path of knowledge, but I think in the last maybe 5 years, it's more in the path of service, and now moving towards the path of surrender. So I'm doing more of the service type of things right now, but slowly moving into the surrendering state.
Nice. How about you, Christine?
Oh, probably the path of knowledge, reading books and just exploring different ideas. Yeah, I don't know maybe a little bit the path of surrender, but probably not. I mean, to be completely honest, I'm probably just path of knowledge.
Yeah. And Kenji, yourself?
Most of my life, I would say I was on the warrior's path, but now I'm totally on the surrender path. And the whole service thing hasn't even come up for me at all. It's just, I'm totally not on that path. And with the exception, I got to say, is that I'm, we'll see how it all goes and everything, but this thing we're doing with the, the whole Kickstarter thing, and that what I would kind of equate to a more service type of thing, but that would, I think, kind of probably be my first time going down that road.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah, I think any kind of volunteer work that we do is the path of service. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of surrender too, because we're surrendering because we found this higher purpose, right? So we're surrendering to that, and we want to share it. So then we're helping others by spreading that message.
I'm actually, for surrendering, my whole thing about surrendering is to get to the higher self, is to open that conduit up to the higher self, and that's the only way I see doing it. And I base that on my warrior's path for the first 50 years of my life. So we'll see how that works out.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a little bit of everything for sure. I'd like to be more of the path of service and surrender, and move totally away from the warrior's path. Get out of my intellect and get into my being level, for sure. So before we go into our closing circle, we still have about 8 minutes left. So is there anything else from this chapter that you guys want to touch upon?
I've highlighted quite a bit of stuff, but let's see if I can pick something that's more significant, I guess.
Well, the very last page, and I don't want to do a spoiler alert for you, but the very last page, it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's the last paragraph in the middle there, when he says, psi ability should never be your end goal. If it is, your capability to manipulate the physical through the non-physical will be severely self-limited and perhaps even self-destructive. He says, psi power should be seen as nothing more than a collateral benefit of an effective path well traveled. It becomes naturally available as your big picture understanding deepens. As your capability increases, your interest in wielding it decreases because you discover that you have everything you need without it. And then at the very last sentence, he says, you have everything you need inside of you.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I love that line. You have everything you need inside of you.
So so when you said that, I was thinking, but that's a belief system. You believe that you have everything inside of you to create whatever you want, right?
Yeah, for me, it's a notion, it's an idea, it's a concept that I resonate with. If I truly believed it, I think that I would probably, my life would be different than it is right now. But it's an idea that I'm open to discovering, that I have everything inside of me.
I think when I hear that, it's like, okay, I believe it, but I have to allow it to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because it's my mindset that's holding me back from making it real.
Mm.
Surrender.
Yeah, surrender.
Surrender.
Let it go.
Right.
Yeah. And kind of what he was saying earlier before he got to that point was the same thing we talked about before, is that, you know, when you have these abilities to manifest parking spots or to, you know, heal any physical disabilities, all these things, you're less likely to want to do them because you realize everything's perfect as it is. You know, you don't need to change or manipulate or control anything. It's just, you just accept things as they are. That's, again, the path of surrender. You surrender to what is rather than wanting to manipulate or change it.
A lot of times it's difficult to find out what is as well, right? What is it that you're trying to surrender to? It may be a deeper concept than at this level, right? It's something way down here. And usually up here, it's that ego that prevents you from figuring out what it is down here that you need.
Like, what are you trying to surrender to in your life?
Well, I think I'm going to use that parking spot analogy because I was thinking if I could utilize how I'm manifesting my parking spots in other areas of my life using that same process, I just have to figure out how to do it. Is there a simple process to do it? What is the right method? Right? If there's a deeper way of attracting or manifesting it, what is it? How do I do it? And how do I test it? I think I know how to test it. It's just what is the process I need to go through to get that?
So kind of, how do you have your intent come from the being level?
Yes. I think we talked about it the other day. How do we create a stronger intent, more powerful intent?
Mm-hmm. I think meditation is a really helpful tool to get into that being level. And then your being will actually show you what the blocks are or what it is that you really want. Like, for example, I was always wanting to be healthy. And I knew it wasn't coming from the being level because I kept reverting back to my old unhealthy habits.
Mm-hmm.
Eating a chocolate muffin for breakfast or, you know, just being unhealthy. And so, And I asked Tom about it. I'm like, why do I, what the hell? Like, why can't I just do this one simple thing? And he's like, it's not coming from the being level. He's like, get to your being level. So I'm like, all right, let me get to my being level. So I sit in meditation, and then I go to have this intent from the being level. My being level is like, nah, I don't want to. I'm like, yeah, I do. And then I just accept it, and I'm like, that's how it is, and I don't feel like changing it at the being level, so I just surrender to the way that it is at the being level.
Mm-hmm.
If it really means that much to you, you can change it at that being level. But first, get honest with yourself at the being level. And you can get honest when you go into that meditative state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yoga is another good practice to do as well.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys, we have 2 minutes. So why don't we do a closing circle? So let's just go around and close her on out. What comes up for you? Any final thoughts, insights, anything that you want to share before we depart?
Thank you. I mean, now I do understand how the law of attraction and the science are more connected. So that's great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Kenji. It's nice to see you again, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was an interesting conversation.
Thanks again, Vanessa. I think it's just a greater insight as to, the psi phenomenon and just getting a better understanding of this chapter.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for holding space and sharing your loving energy. I love soaking it up, so I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to next Thursday, so 3:45. We'll finish off section 3. Mm-hmm. So we've got chapters 48, 49 in the trilogy.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week,
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.